With her spot confirmed, 18-year-old Emily Coppins is ready to blast out of the blocks.
That's pretty nerve-wracking. It'll be exciting though to run against other countries.
After representing Australia at the Junior World Championships last year, Coppins has been on the comeback trail. A layoff due to injury and the retirement of coach Max Debnam forced her to take her preparation into her own hands.
Really hard. I'm setting my own programs. I'm getting help with some weights programs and core programs. But yeah, just setting my own programs.
Meanwhile, a victory at the recent Landy Mile in Melbourne has Newcastle's Dave Bradney installed as one of the favourites for the men's 1500. He's competed at the Classic on several occasions, but admits this is the first year he's had a chance to win.
Without a doubt, the strongest 1500 metre field, the 100 track classics ever had.
A solid result could see the 23-year-old qualify for international events, something which he hopes could gain him selection in the Australian team.
I'd love to represent Australia at the highest level, and certainly a Commonwealth Games and World Champs and Olympics is something that I'm certainly aiming for.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
It's over 400 competitors, 46 plus teams of 6 competing in outrigger racing in the harbour and offshore.
Say goodbye to Hollywood.
Huge step for my career. It's either the making of it or the end of it.
Chad Bennett's about to take on the fast-finishing Ben Ankra for the WBO Asia Pacific light welterweight title. He'll be fighting in the City of Lights, and Hollywood hopes he's not the one left seeing stars.
Give him everything I've got early, and take a punt.
The 37-fight veteran won't need to look far for inspiration. He's capping off his preparations at the world-famous Mayweather Boxing Gym.
Just been in the gym and training with Roger, his uncle who trains Floyd, will be a great experience for me.
While a loss could end his career, a win could potentially bring a world title fight to Newcastle.
That's my dream. April 5 at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre for a world title. That's basically the biggest dream that I've got.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
According to Peter Blackmore, the Hunter Infrastructure Fund set up by the O'Farrell government is achieving what it set out to do. What he's concerned about is the difference between funding estimates for projects and what's actually needed. $43 million of the body's funds were committed to upgrade Nelson Bay Road. The project has since blown out to $63 million. He says the state government needs to pay the difference.
Because by taking more money out of the infrastructure fund, you're denying another project.
The key thing with project blowouts is they shouldn't be happening.
As for claims likening the fund to pork barrelling, Mr Blackmore says the government was clear from the start that many, but not all projects being funded were election commitments.
Even opposition members, their electorates have been catered for in this fund.
The Glendale Interchange, even though it's a project that I'm intimately involved in, it doesn't sit in my electorate, it sits in the member for Wallsend's electorate.
Meanwhile, there could be more money on the way for the fund.
I'm confident that the Treasurer, if money is made available, he will top up the fund. As to what level, that's entirely up to the government.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
It looms large over the African landscape. Kilimanjaro, the world's tallest freestanding mountain, and the only thing standing between around 100 paragliders and potentially the greatest achievement of their lives. The Wings of Kilimanjaro contingent plan to scale the peak almost 6,000 metres and then take a giant leap of faith.
If the mission is completed, I and the other pilots that make it will join a very exclusive club. Humans, and there's not too many animals either, that have experienced free flight over 19,000 feet.
Years of planning has gone into the trip and some delicate diplomacy.
It took about 5 years to work with the Tanzanian government to get special permission, because on Kilimanjaro you can't so much as ride a mountain bike down Mount Kilimanjaro, let alone fly off the top.
Today, Gav did some last-minute checks on the paper-thin chute that will carry him back to the foot of the mountain. But equipment is only part of the battle, with months of flight and fitness training hopefully paying off come February 5.
The hardest part about that, Kath, and the big unknown, all of mine, or most of my training has been at sea level, so I'm at a huge disadvantage.
The trip is all in the name of raising funds for several charities in Africa, and donations can still be made online. But Gav also has another focus.
To come back alive.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
Daniel McBreen is the A-League's top marksman. And he says he's not the only one the Jets should be worried about. Young gun Anthony Caceres is being looked to as a replacement for Celtic-bound star Tom Rogic.
I'd say that even with Tommy here, he's got the best feet. Cass has got the best feet in the club. His touch on the ball is immaculate.
But the top-placed Mariners shouldn't have it all their own way. The Jets have their own strike weapon back.
Being an F3 derby, that keeps everyone on their toes a little bit more, and if we can come away with another clean sheet, then we've gone a long way to getting the result.
Former Newcastle United striker McBreen, however, puts the Jets' recent run of clean sheets down to one thing. And the Jets' defence could take a hit even before kick-off. Taylor Regan didn't train today and is in doubt due to a sore calf muscle.
He'll talk to the physio on that today, but having not trained this morning, then it puts a big question mark over him. And as we said earlier, we've got people like Josh Mitchell that are available again.
Young gun Andrew Houle also started at the back against the Raw, and other stoppers are waiting in the wings.
Scotty Neville's fit again. He gives a little bit of experience.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
Structural protection. This is a rare situation. We need some pumpers here urgently.
Terror as a wall of fire roars frighteningly close to homes.
You could feel the heat of the flames just coming towards you.
A blaze so intense, fuelled by high temperatures and strong westerly winds, it spreads quickly.
I get round the corner and it's hell breaking loose.
As the fire jumps containment lines, crews scramble. Residents do what they can.
You can't do much when it's just burning out of control like that.
I have my 4-year-old son with me, just trying to save everything.
Katie Nelson's house was saved. She thought the drama was over until an early knock on her door this morning.
Knock at the door and a gentleman from our backside said that your roof was on fire.
The family home had been smouldering throughout the night.
It's too scary to think about. It's just too scary.
No homes were lost in this blaze, but only just.
The asset protection zones, the firefighters and the backed up by the aircraft have done an exceptional job.
Today's cool change was welcomed as the mop-up began. The emotion and relief overwhelming. Police say the fire was deliberately lit and are now hunting 4 men.
It's believed the fire was sparked by this car, which was dumped here on Thursday and set alight. While the threat has eased, tempers have flared as the focus turns to finding those responsible.
How would you describe the sort of people who do these things?
Scumbags. Their punishment's not going to be good enough.
Stephanie Jeans, NBN News.
46 crews from across New South Wales and the ACT assembled on Horseshoe Beach, more than happy to swap yesterday's hot air for a cool breeze. From the start of the 8-kilometre race, the top three was quickly established. 2 Sydney clubs and Port Macquarie setting the pace. For the rest, it was no bed of roses, no pleasure cruise, as they set sail for the brewery for the first time. Sporting a new $21,000 boat, the Newcastle crew had plenty of support. The girls from Port Stephens were in perfect harmony, but even on the open ocean, the Sydney men's crew couldn't be toppled. No need for a photo finish, as the boys from Balmoral won by a nautical mile.
Here's always challenging. You've got a lot of tide coming up the channel. You've got the big southerly blowing today, and normally we get out around the heads. There's a nice southerly swell blowing. So it's always a bit of a challenge, a bit of everything.
Port Macquarie edged into third.
Good hit out, a couple of new players that we had paddling with us today, so it was their first hit, and yeah mate, we're very happy with the result.
Newcastle finished well back overall, but say the best is yet to come in their new boat.
The Commander is amazing. We've saved a lot of money and done a lot of fundraising to get this boat, and it just went beautifully like a bullet.
For most crews, simply finishing is reason enough for celebration.
Yeah, the police officer's received medical treatment at a local hospital for lacerations and bruising around the face, particularly around his nose and around the neck area.
The General Manager's sudden resignation has rattled councillors.
Where does that leave us now?
Phil Pearce will leave council in March, just 18 months into a 5-year contract. It comes amid claims of tension with the Lord Mayor over his move to establish a financial advisory panel.
And I do believe that the General Manager was not invited to those meetings, and that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
Former Lord Mayor John Tate says there's a well-known history of relationship breakdowns between past Lord Mayors and General Managers.
Well, that makes it extremely hard, and I've been through that.
He says Mr Pearce's resignation is also due to a lack of cohesion within council.
Some of the senior officers were not supporting him.
Council is in the grips of an $8 million budget deficit. Recruiting a new General Manager could take months and cost tens of thousands of dollars.
To not have a General Manager for 12 months like we did last time, council ended up with the Lehman Street tree disaster, and at the moment I can see the art gallery going the same way.
The position has been likened to a revolving door. The city has had 5 general managers in almost as many years. Mr Pearce declined our invitation to comment, while the Lord Mayor didn't return NBN's calls. Stephanie Jeans, NBN News.
The coach may have been suspended, but Graham Arnold's jacket still took its place on the Mariners bench. Mile Stajovski put his hand up for an acting award as Ruben Zadkovic went into the referee's book. Returning from injury, Emil Heskey's radar was off target, firing 2 headers wide from the same spot. Michael McGlinchey came closest for the Mariners after 40 minutes. Josh Berlanti returned serve for the Jets shortly before the break. The visitors were quickest out of the gates in the second half. James Brown found himself in a similar position a minute later. No derby is complete without a scuffle. A tackle by Josh Mitchell turned up the heat. In reply, the Coast went looking for a winner, but finished with Stajovski seeing yellow. Late substitute Andrew Houle almost stole the 3 points, but 0-0 was how it stayed.
I think the Australian team's back in business again.
Wallsend doesn't have a police station, and the local business community says it shows.
Basically smashing windows, and the smashing in the windows is not just for break and enters, it's just because they have nothing better to do. Now if the police were around or locally, I doubt whether a lot of that would have happened.
State MP Sonia Hornery isn't immune. Her electoral office has been targeted 23 times in the last 2 years.
Makes you feel very insecure to go to a building where the door's smashed, and you're waiting for somebody to come and repair it. So it's a scary feeling.
The spate of attacks has seen renewed calls for Wallsend to have its own police station.
And even the police locally admit to the fact that they can't defeat crime in the area as they'd like it to because of a lack of resourcing and lack of local police stations.
The suburb has been without a station for more than 10 years after staff were transferred to Waratah. But housing development in the area's west has boomed, raising concerns and prompting 2,500 people to sign this petition.
We should be acting sooner than later in the interests of local residents and local businesses who are the ones that are really paying the price.
Christy Reading, NBN News. They can be scary and deadly.
You see your daughter that she doesn't breathe and you don't know what to do.
3-year-old asthma sufferer Alice Spadari has already spent more time in hospital than many of us will in a lifetime.
During all 2011, we've been in the hospital 8 times because she had asthma.
Now, an international team led by Newcastle researchers has found what it calls a needle in a haystack. It discovered 2 lung proteins which trigger asthma attacks when they come into contact with the common cold or allergens. Scientists then modified them in tests on mice with incredible results.
When we therapeutically modulate those proteins in preclinical studies, that they protect from the development of mucus production, of airways obstruction and of inflammation.
The finding could lead to more effective medication for asthmatics and even put a stop to attacks altogether. The disease affects around 70,000 people in the Hunter. Around 12% of the region's adults have been diagnosed with asthma and a quarter of 2 to 8-year-olds. While researchers say the latest breakthrough will take years to bear fruit, it's a step forward.
If we know that she doesn't have to go to the hospital, she doesn't have to follow this bad path that she had, it's a dream for us, really.
Stephanie Jeans, NBN News.
They're young and should be fit and healthy, but a University of Newcastle survey shows 18 to 24-year-old women have major weight worries.
About 2/3 of them have actually been on a diet in the last year, but 8 out of 10 are disappointed with their results. So even though they're really interested in getting to a healthy weight, they feel lost when it comes to knowing what to do.
And 3/4 regularly opt for takeaway over healthier home cooking. As part of Australia's Healthy Weight Week, the university's nutrition and dietetics team is out to bust some fast food myths. On Wednesday, it'll stage a healthy fast food challenge.
We're going to show that you can cook fast food that tastes amazing, that's super healthy, and that's cheaper, quicker than you can get home delivery.
It may sound like a tall order, but the secret, according to Professor Collins, is to plan ahead. She says it's vital young women get a handle on their weight.
They're tomorrow's mums. If we don't help them get to a healthy weight at this stage, then it's going to reduce their fertility, it's going to make them feel bad, and by the time they get to middle age, they're actually going to need to lose something like 50 kilos.
The Healthy Weight Week website has information and tips for good eating.
Round 3 and the American Supercross Series return to Anaheim, with Chad Reed determined to improve on 2 fourth-place finishes. After easing into 7th early, the Aussie eventually snuck into 3rd, following a battle with series leader Davey Millsaps, who fell on the penultimate lap.
Not happy because I want to ride better and I want the feeling to be a little better. But we were within the window this weekend.
Reed will again go back to the test track to get ready for round 4 in Oakland.
Much better day. Just not enough time in a week and a weekend to get where we need to be. But we're getting there slowly, and hopefully by next week we can challenge for the win.
The result moves Reed to 3rd in the championship. Still on 2 wheels, and Lake Macquarie's Peter Lewis has backed up his bronze medal at the Track Cycling World Cup in Mexico by qualifying in 6th in the 200, setting a new Australian record in the process. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. If you're going to learn the finer points of cricket from anyone, Mark Waugh is a pretty good option. But the batting great admits there are some things he can't teach the next generation.
They watch the cricket these days, and with 2020 and those sorts of games, there's a lot of different sort of shots that are played compared to when we played. We just did the basics, but it's just a matter of batting and bowling and fielding.
Waugh wasn't the only legend in town. Ray Bright played for Australia in the 70s and 80s and featured in the formation of Kerry Packer's World Series cricket. More recently, he helped with the production of the series, How's That?
I helped the boys that played Hooksy and Marshy and DK. I helped those hopefully improve their skills, but they were very keen and they had a pretty good cricket background anyway, so they were fantastic to work with.
Our national team may have experienced mixed results in recent years, but the former internationals believe the next generation is as healthy as ever. As for the current team's rotation policy, Waugh believes players need more input.
I'd like to see it just be kept a lot simpler. You know, you speak to the players after each game and see how they're feeling and get more of a feel from the players themselves, because you're the one who knows, how fatigued you are or if you've got a bit of a niggle.
And having seen some of our best junior talent, can we expect another Novocastrian in the green and gold anytime soon?
Rick McCoskey was from up here, and of course Dutchy Holland and Gary Gilmore, so there's been a few, so let's hope clinics like this might just find a few more down the track.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
24 hours after the most brazen robbery attempt in the club's history, members rallied to repair the damage.
Within 5 minutes of me getting here yesterday morning, I was on to some of the members. By lunchtime yesterday, the hole had been plugged.
Shortly after 3 on Monday morning, the would-be thief arrived in a ute before inspecting the wall with a torch. He then returned just over half an hour later after stealing a trailer from one of the club's members. Armed with an angle grinder, he got to work, cutting through the first layer of brick before breaking down the remainder of the wall with a sledgehammer.
Once inside, the thief tried to remove the safe, which was here, back through the wall, but it just wouldn't fit, so he had to go back through the club to get it out.
And in so doing has set off an alarm, which alerted security, and security have disturbed him.
He loaded the safe onto his ute and sped off as security arrived. But the safe, which wasn't securely tied down, flew off the vehicle less than 100 metres down the road.
It's devastating. You take it personally. You can't help but take it personally.
It's the latest blow to a club which has bred some of the region's top golfers. Only last Friday, Hoons tore up 6 of the greens, causing more than $10,000 in damage.
Scum of the earth, mate. They're terrible.
Golfers are now using makeshift greens.
Some of the worst greens, you're looking at probably 2 months before they're going to be fully covered. So it's pretty heartbreaking at the moment.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News. It's been a labour of love, volunteering at schools across the Hunter as part of the Mullabinba Aboriginal Education Group. Now, Melinda Brown's been rewarded for years of service.
I was proud of what I've done, and I didn't realise how much I've actually achieved in life.
Miss Brown is an advocate for cultural affirmation and equality for Indigenous students. She hopes some of her own success will rub off on those she mentors.
Achieve better things than what I have, and I love being a great role model for them.
The now Lake Macquarie Citizen of the Year doesn't plan on doing anything differently, and she credits her win to those closest to her.
My kids are my backbone, and they've been there for me, and they'll always be there for me and pushing me to achieve all the things that I do with other kids.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
They're images we see in the news but can never fully comprehend. Around 500,000 Congolese have fled their country amid unrest between armed gangs. Marie-José Zawadi is one of them, and although she and her 3 surviving children now live in Newcastle, the memories are a permanent reminder of why they're here. 16 years ago, while she was still at school, Marie received a message no child should hear.
They told me, your parents, it's died, and some brother and sister. I was have nothing. I take decision to get married. Maybe I was thinking if I have husband, we were 2 people, we help each other.
But the trauma of losing her family was soon relived.
It was in 2008. We was in the house. We was here, the people, they come, many people outside. Then they come, they knock by force, they enter inside. That time, they take my husband, they start to beat us so much.
Marie took her 3 remaining children and fled to the forest, which is where she discovered what befell her husband and son.
I saw him and my son. He was dead, then and my son. They have culture to put the people they don't like together. They kill them each other.
After 2 months, Marie and her children made it to a refugee camp in Uganda and eventually received asylum in Australia. She's since discovered one of her 5 siblings is alive and living in Africa.
I'm happy 90% now, because I hear one of my bride, she's alive. I was thinking it's me only.
But the experience has etched a scar time will never heal.
You know, my children, they know I was suffering with them in refugee camp. They was very little, they know.
Another man who didn't want to be identified has just arrived in the Hunter from Ethiopia. He too suffered as a result of political unrest.
People were denied the right to move, to have access to passport. I was taken by officials to clandestine torturing place. The torturing was involved, I can say, inhuman, upside down, severe beating.
While many seek asylum through legal channels, others do not. Javed made the decision to leave Iran and enter Australia by boat. He spent 15 months on Christmas Island after attempting to come here illegally.
We were 5 days on ocean in the boat. It's not very big. I'm not sure, but maybe it's more than 17% human in a small boat, and many kids.
His motivation for paying a people smuggler was to avoid persecution for his Christian faith inside a Muslim nation. He left behind a wife and daughter he hasn't seen in 2 years.
Australia is not my choice, you know. I want just freedom. I live in freedom with my family.
Every year, Australia accepts almost 14,000 refugees, and that's about to increase to 20,000. Those who work with refugees believe understanding their situation will help dispel stigma surrounding asylum seekers.
And I think the Australian community and certainly people in the Hunter would benefit from listening to some of the stories that the refugees have, because it actually puts a face to the human side of what they've experienced coming here.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
He's contracted to Brisbane South at the moment, but there's an understanding there if we need him, then they'll release him. And he's down having a week's training with us now, and he'll do that every month for the next couple.
Returning from a knee injury, Job Wheelhouse has made 2 cameos off the bench. Clearly, he's been hoping for more game time.
It's not like it was a torn quad or a torn groin or something like that. It was just one of those things at training that, you know, happens every year. You can't really tackle and you tear your medial and you miss 5 or 6 weeks, which is obviously frustrating.
Ruben Zadkovic picked up his 5th yellow card for the season against the Mariners, which means he'll miss the trip to Wellington. The stand-in skipper sat out today's session while Wheelhouse trained with the starting 11, but that's no guarantee he'll be captain against the Phoenix.
You never know until game day. I think you know, the boys have been doing really well, the ones that have come in my absence, so I've had to wait my time, but this week I get my opportunity.
The local product is coming off contract and has fielded calls from other clubs.
There's been a little bit of interest. I guess that comes when Newcastle haven't really tabled anything to me yet. So, yeah, that's you got to look after your livelihood. So, you know, if I have to move on, I will. But you know, I'm a Newcastle boy. I want to stay.
Having recently signed a new 2-year deal, Sam Galloway has been a big part of the Jets' 3 straight clean sheets.
Halfway through the season, I didn't really know where I was going to be, but now I've secured a 2-year deal. I'm comfortable, but you just got to keep focused always and hopefully play your best every game.
The players agree they'll all need to be at their best if they're going to turn around their woeful record in New Zealand. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
we're going to be the first hit out for these surfers. They've had a bit of a long break, especially the ladies, so they're going to use this as definitely a hit out to sort of test equipment and test how they're going on their fitness.
This is not necessary. This is health we're talking about. It's not roads and infrastructure. It's people's lives, your family, my family. That's what it's all about, Barry.
Massive storms ravaged the dunes mid-last year. National parks then put them off limits to the public, citing erosion combined with heavy use by campers and drivers. But that decision is now being questioned.
National parks used it as an excuse to essentially lock regular Aussies, fishermen, campers, four-wheel drivers, trail bike riders out under the guise of storm damage.
We'd like to have an indication of what the plan is from the parks on repair to the areas and when they're going to be reopened again.
Adding to the ire of four-wheel drive enthusiasts is the installation of gates throughout the Wadigans National Park.
One day I won't be able to access all these wonderful places in Australia with my beautiful family because there'll be gates locked up.
National parks couldn't give a clear indication about the future of the Stockton dunes in a statement today, but denied any new closures have been imposed in the Wadigans, stating the gates installed will only be closed temporarily. A protest rally scheduled for Stockton's Pitt Street Reserve on the 2nd of February is now gaining momentum, with organisers expecting more than 1,000 vehicles. Kath Landers, NBN News.
They can give it to us and we'll have them transported out on Friday out to Coonabarabran for them to be able to be presented to them on the Australia Day, the Saturday.
I would say
that you would know more about the arguments and disagreements about how it will be funded than the nuts and bolts about what it proposes to deliver. For me, pride in a socially just country has no price tag, and this needs to happen. In Australia, 45% of people with a disability live in or near poverty. Our system is broken. We aren't doing enough.
There would have been a great sense of expectation last year. Have you had a feeling of what the sense of expectation is for this year?
Well, we certainly got rid of that expectation feeling, didn't we? Didn't take us long. I know there's, I spoke a little bit about that last year, and expectation is something you put on yourself, and I try not to do that to myself. It doesn't help me what I got to do. It's always there, and it's always there, but I have an expectation of myself and what I can deliver and how I can deliver it, and that's more important to me than what somebody else might expect me to be able to do.
Do you have a goal in mind?
No, I don't really have a position. I think there's a lot of new players in the team, and they have to come together a little bit. Am I confident that we can have a pretty good season? Yeah, I am. I'm confident about that.
You felt like when you first came in, there was a little bit of an us and them, some of the new players, some of the new staff, that sort of stuff. Do you feel like everyone is one entity now?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm probably in my first year actually at the moment. Yeah, things have come together really well now, and there's a very stable playing group there, and there's been a lot of changes made there, and it feels a lot more like footy clubs I'm used to being part of.
Adelaide's loss is Newcastle's gain.
I've seen enough quality from him to think that we're going to get real good value out of him. Technically he's very good, works hard.
Zenon Caravella is the Reds' reigning player of the season, but has rarely featured in the A-League since.
I wanted to play first team football, and as you said, I wasn't playing much there. So, to come here and play, I'm very grateful for it.
Despite lacking match fitness, the 29-year-old is confident he's up to the task if called upon this weekend.
While I haven't played, I've been training a lot with the first team. I've been training for the last 6 months straight. So, fitness is not a huge issue at the moment.
The Jets have confirmed several signings in recent weeks, but appear no closer to a decision on Joe Wheelhouse's future. Today, the coach denied that the addition of Caravella means the skipper is on the way out.
With Jobe's future not settled, is this perhaps a direct replacement for him?
No, not at all.
Is Jobe essentially auditioning for his future this weekend?
No, not at all.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
I've had a few 2-unders here the last 2 weeks, both rounds, so hopefully I can just continue this. Hopefully the weather's pretty good too, and so if it gets a bit windy, I can play with it because I'm a local.
According to Newcastle Airport CEO Paul Hughes, it's not a case of if flights to Perth, Adelaide and Cairns will take off, but when.
We're hoping to see some action on that in the next 12 months, maybe 18 months, depending on aircraft orders.
It's good news not only for holidaymakers but the local economy, with Chinese travel wholesalers saying direct access to Newcastle from Cairns is top of their agenda.
We're working with them to look at maybe an opportunity where we can actually bring people from Cairns on a domestic flight into the Hunter region.
As for flights to New Zealand, Port Stephens Council has applied for $11 million from the Hunter Infrastructure Fund to extend the airport's arrivals hall, something that needs to happen before such services can start.
What we need to do here is build new infrastructure for the airport to put in customs, immigration and quarantine in terms of all of the border security arrangements necessary for an international flight.
And in the future, New Zealand might not be the only overseas destination available from Williamtown.
We'll be reviewing our master plan this year, but we would think that if growth prospects continue with the Asian market, that within 5 years is quite possible.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
It's a part of Mary Wall's past that was almost lost forever. Once its lifeblood, the rail line delivered freight and passengers to the small rural town.
There wasn't the trucks on the roads that you have today. There weren't other available transport to get out of town. You didn't have taxis or plane service and things that people take for granted. You know, the train was our way of life.
But the line closed in 1988 and the station has sat idle ever since, deteriorating to the point where it was earmarked for demolition.
It would have been just a tragic loss to the location.
But with that threat looming, a community group was formed, and with the help from Upper Hunter Shire Council, tens of thousands of dollars have been spent to restore the station to its former glory.
Get it back into place so that the younger people and the next generation, the one after that, have the opportunity of participating in what was here.
It's taken hundreds of hours to replace the roof, walls and flooring, a fresh coat of paint and signage mirroring the originals. There are now plans to open the station to the public.
You just get a feeling of being very proud of the fact that of the amount of work a few people can do.
And the ideas don't stop there, with talks underway to reopen part of the line down the track.
Just so people could actually experience what it was like to ride on an old motor train. That would be fantastic, it really would.
Christy Reading, NBN News.